So let's set my product.base default image to this string that we have, and set this image to empty because we are not using this anymore. We are done working with this. So to clear it, remove the memory, or to free the memory, then you have to return. Okay, so that's what we are doing here. And when this button gets clicked, what is it doing? So for now, as I speak, the image has its string created or selected already. And maybe you have also the data here populated. We can run our own queries, or we can run our own system to check for validations. But since we have this, what you do here is we go to the model, and now on top of this model, where we have the shared library, you will see that we have a models folder. We have this product class. Now here we specify the required attribute on top. So that's what's going to use. Maybe the quantity here must be required. Okay, and maybe it should be more than what? 0. So the range should be 0 up to maybe 99999, etc. So we can just grab this and let's put it on top here. So the range should be, we don't have to pass in 0 because you can put an item which have the quantity of 0. No, and it should be 9999999. For now, you can extend it, but for now, let's maintain this as what? As is it 99,999? That's what we want to do. Okay, for this quantity. And now, as it featured for that one, you can decide to set this to, if defaultly set to false. Okay, so maybe default you can set this to false by default. You can override it anytime that you want to do it. And now we have the date set over here. So this date has a default value, so we don't need to specify this required. Feature also has a default value, so you don't need to set this required on top. Now we have this. Let's see. So we have this set. Now in this method, what are we doing? Before we check this, let's have a look with the features or the UI when you run this. I believe you knew you're going to have an error, isn't it? Because we did not specify the show button. Yes, so that's why we need to set that before we move on. Okay, so let's handle that first. So what we need to do here, let's create a public variable here to handle this show button. And maybe let's put, because you're going to use a dialog box to display message, so let's set it here as a show busy button. And we have it set. So I believe you're not going to have any issue again. And now save, show save button 2, we need to set that as well. So let's see, and show save. So we're going to toggle between the two. Don't worry, I'm going to explain them to you for now, later on. Let's run this and see the UI that we have now. So the app is ready. Now let's navigate to add product. So this is what we have. You can see we have this add products, and we have the name, we have the price, and we have the quantity, the description, and the upload image. So for now, defaultly it is an upload image. If I click on, because we have this plus, if I click on save product, you can see I have all these errors in here. And our quantity, we said the range supposed to be 1, 0 up to, let's check it out and see if we're able to do it too well. So we go to the product, and our quantity, the range must be, okay, so it must be 1. Let's save this. Now let's check it out. So save this, and okay, it hasn't refreshed yet. Let's see, refresh this. All right, so let's do it again. Now add product. Okay, so we have it. Now if I click on save product, you see I must have all of these red because I need to specify this. Now you see it has the base image field is required. The field price must be between this. The quantity must also be between 1 and 9999. The name is required. So this validation is working as expected. Now if I click on save button, what should happen? We want to toggle, as soon as I click on save button, we want to hide this save button and I'll display the busy button, that's the spinner button. So it desists or it prevents the user from clicking on the button again. Okay, so let's have a look with that. Now when I come here, you can see there's supposed to be a class because the view here, we must have the page divided into 2. So you forgot this. So it's supposed to be class. like this, double S. Okay. Now, when I click on this, what should happen? The first thing I do here is we want to set this button, this save button. So, show save button. Let's set this to false. You know, defaultly, as soon as you run the page, it is set to true. So, it is showing. Now, let's set this to false. So, this is equal to false. It means if I click on that button, then hide the save button. If I hide that, then I'm going to show this. So, show busy button is set to true. And if I set this here, let's set this true. If I set this here, it's going to show this button. Notice the show button variable bound to. So it is going to show this button. This button is going to be a busy button, which is also disabled. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is, in case this button, this is false, okay, this button is going to show. And in case this shows, this button must be false. Okay. So we don't want to be running it on ourselves. We can just use a simple negation to handle that. So instead of setting this to true, we can just set this, the opposite of this. And you know, what is the opposite of this save button? It is true. So if this becomes true, then this show button is going to be false. If this is false, this becomes true. If this is true, it becomes false. Okay. So at the time, show busy button becomes the opposite of the show save button. All right. Now, we have this set. Let's save this. I believe this is clear, isn't it? If you are not, pause it and try to go back and listen it again, okay? We're setting it in the opposite of this. So you can just automatically render it without we have to create another method to handle those. Okay. Now, what we're doing here is we want to check if the image has been selected. Then we check if string here, it is not null or empty from this base image. Then we want to show this dialog box. If string here, it is null or empty. Take note. I said not null, but rather I did not negate it. It is null. So if the user did not select an image, then message dialog box dot set dialog values. So where from this method? It is a method that we are using a dialog in .NET 8 to handle that. I've made a video on how to use .NET 8 dialog element. And that's really what I'm using. In here, I am going for a type, an alert type, and an alert message. So you can see I have warning and I have the message in here. And also I have this set message dialog. What are these methods doing here? Don't worry. Let's start with creating or having this method set. So let's first create this component. You know, this is a component that we need to create. So let's go to solution. Now in the pages folder, let's create this component in here. And I'm going to say it is a message dialog. The responsibility of this guy here is to display messages to the user, either a success message or an error message. Okay, so we're going to customize it to make it in a dynamic form that when you have an error, you can call this display. And also when you have a success message, you can also call the save dialog element to display that. We are using a dialog element. By the end of the day, we are putting it in a component. So it's going to be a dialog component. Okay. So you can keep this and you can be using it in your project, subsequent project that you'll be doing. I believe you're going to do that. Okay. So we have this dialog element from .NET 8, and you can see we have this as my ID. And we have this, the style. These are all CSS styles. And I believe you are good at CSS than I do. We have the card header, as you can see from here, and there's notifications. And the card body, you can see this is an alert type. So we're using a div class of alert and alert type. And you specify the message. So alert type here could be alert danger, alert warning, alert info, alert primary. Okay. So we're going to specify that based on the state of the message that you want to pass in. And now you're passing the message in here. We have a card footer, and that is a okay or agreed or all right. You can rename it anytime that you want, any name that you want, you can give it to it. And now you want to set up the button based on the alert type. So if this is a danger, you're going to have danger here. If this is info, you're going to have info. If it is success, you're going to have success displayed in here. And you know, there's a form method as dialog. So as soon as I click on OK, this form can get hidden. Now we specify this here as the alert type and alert and this message. Defaultly, we set them to empty. I believe you'll be asking yourself, why? Why don't you create this as a parameter? Yes, we don't want to do that because we want to perform status change. So you want to create a priority method in it so we can be setting this method ourselves. So see, we have a priority method, and now we say we have alert type and now the message. So instead of calling this, setting the values for these guys here, no, we create a method and we set the values from this method we set the values from these parameters or these variables through the method that we have defined. After that, we can call the state has changed. And that's exactly what this is doing. You can see that this alert type has been assigned the value to this alert. So these are going to come from outside the world. Okay, so outside the scope. Then we set it to the values for this. Aside from that, use this state has changed, which will render the application or the content to have these messages set over here, and now refresh the app to get them notified. Okay, now here it is show message. So here too, after setting this, having these values as a current state, then we want to invoke this void. And now here it is a JavaScript method that we are calling. If you've watched that video, I'll put it at the description. You will see we call the same method show dialog JavaScript. Okay, so this is a method that we are calling a JavaScript. And you know we have this error here because if you want to invoke JavaScript, definitely you need an interface for this Java runtime. So we can do that quickly. From here, let's go to the import. Let's create one and for all. So here we're going to say @inject, and let's inject IJS runtime. I believe you've seen that before. And let's say JS. You save this, and now when you go back to the message dialog box, you're going to say this is going to get lost because we have the interface or the instance created or injected in the import.razor file. Okay, so this must be off now as I speak. It should go off. Now let's see if I close this and if I open it again, I have to see this gone. Okay, yeah, it is because it has now found the root and it is in the import file. You can see from this, it has been injected. Okay, now we have this. So this is the message. So anytime that you want to show this, call this method. Anytime that you want to set the values, call this method. Very simple, isn't it? So it seems like it is a state that we are creating. This a local state. Okay, this is not a global state. It's a local state that we are creating, but we have a global method that we can invoke it outside the component, and we're going to set the state of this and also perform a state has changed to re-render the component and then get at the current values that we need. So once you have this, let's go to the add or update component and I'll consume that. Since we have method here, the question is how can we call this method? We are not using an event callback or an action type to return or to notify. Here we're using a method in here. The best way to do that is use the ref attribute. I hope I've made a video on how to use a ref attribute to handle method in a chat component. So we have to add this as a chat component first. And now down here, let's add a chat component. So we can do that from down there, and in here let's paste this chat component, and that's a message dialog that we have. We set it as ref message dialog. Now when you create this reference referring to this method, this component, it means that all public method in this component is going to be available in this message dialog reference here. So to do that, we can also create an instance of this reference to match the component state here. So on top of this, I like to group them. So on top here, we say message dialog, and this we set to nullable because you can call a method, you can pass in empty one, and we have to make it as nullable. So we have nullable here, we create an instance, and now we're saying that message dialog.set dialog values. We pass in the alert type, and now there's the alert message. I believe this is clear. When we are done, you want to call this set message dialog. Here, once you set the values, it's going to call a state has changed, isn't it? Because if I peep this here, if I click on peak definition, it's going to set what state has changed, as you can see from this. And we need to call this method. But this method will be called often. So why don't you create another separate component so you can be calling it all the time? You know, in programming, one thing that you have to take note here, it is do not repeat yourself. Do not repeat yourself. Okay? So the code that you create, you make sure you create an extensible one that you can be using in and out of your application. So you don't want to repeat ourselves. So in order to do that, we want to create a component. Is it a component or a class to handle that? So the class is what the class is going to do. Let's put it down here. And on this class, we say it is set message dialog. What is it going to do? we are saying that await message.show. So we are calling this message dialog. We call this, okay, to show the message. After showing the message, we want to set show button to false, because show busy button here has to hide, because there's an output from the API. So when there's an output, we don't want to start showing the spinner. No, the process is completed. So the spinner should off, and now the show save button should come to life. All right. So that's exactly what we are doing. Or even with this, we can say that this show save button is equal to the opposite of this. So we can also do same here. So instead of setting this to true, we can say it is an opposite of the show message. So both of them can show at the same time. One must be off, one must be on. One must be off, one must be on. Anytime the show button here is false, this save button is going to be true. And we call this state has changed. This state has changed here is going to be called inside this method here. But here we have the show button from this section. So we need to also call state has changed. So this means that we are calling state has changed twice. So this is what we can do. We can also create this in a component, and I'll call the state has changed in here. But for now, don't worry. We call state has changed in this component, and we call state has changed in also the parent component. And it's still going to work, okay? No confusion. I don't want to confuse you much with a lot of code. We want to do it step by step. I believe you'll love it. Okay. So that is this one. That what we need to do. Let's save this. And that is it. Now here, we need to use is an async task. So if this is null, then we display this message. But what if in case it is not? In case it is not empty, it has data, then we are going to call our service and display the results. So here we are using the tuple. So tuple here, we are making an explicit output, explicit outcome. You know, this method is going to return, the product service is going to return a flag and also a message. So if you check our controller, I don't want to go back, but for now, let's say this is our product service. We're going to go to solution and I'll check the service. We have our product service in the client section. Let's see. We have our services. Where is it? So let's see where our service is going to handle. Okay, so this means we have not created any service, but we are trying to call this service. Wow, I forgot to create it. All right, so let's pause here and I'll create this service before we come back here and I'll utilize it. So when I come, I'm going to explain this to you. Okay, so for now, skip this and now let's create the service. So quickly we go to solution, and now in the client section, right click on the client project. Let's add the folder here, and this folder I'm going to say, okay, so let's stop this. It is still running. Let's say this is a client service. So yeah, I'm going to say it's a client service. So client services. Okay. So, I want to make it as client service because it's going to handle all client services. So services will be okay. Then in that, let's have access to a class. And on this class, I can make it as client service. And I think this will help. So client service. Okay, or client services. So this client services, this is what it's going to do. It's going to inherit from the iProduct. This is an interface of iProduct. And this iProduct is coming from the contract folder from the shared library. And it has some method that we need to implement. So control period, we implement all the interfaces here. We have 2 interfaces in there. And this interface that we use in our API is the same thing here. We don't want to create 2 interfaces. No, which have the same method or types. So then we can just create one and use them here and there. We make it in a smart way, then we move on with it. Okay. So now that we have this service, since we're going to make a call to an API, let's inject an HTTP client. And we can do that from a primary constructor. From now onwards, anytime that I create .NET 8 projects, I'm going to use primary constructor because that's a new one and that's what we need to use. Okay, we want to upgrade our coding style. So let's use the new ones and to use that to skip a whole lot of writing, a whole lot of code. So here, let's pass in, we need to inject HTTP client. Let's create an instance here. And that's all. We need not to inject this. Okay, we have it created already. And that will be all. Okay. So once you have this, let's go in there and register this before quickly we forget. So we go to the program in the same client section. Now in here we say builder.services. So .services.add scope. Now with this scope, you're going to specify the iProduct as an interface. Then you're going to say it is a client service. So client services here, and we can now close like this. Okay, so we Control KD, save it well, and let's go back to the client services. We have it injected. All right, so from add product, what are you going to do in the add product? Before you create an add product, you want to create a general static method to handle that. Okay, and this static method, you want to have access to the base URL. So on top here, let's have this base URL specified, and it's from the API/product. You know where we get this from? Go to this solution. Now go to the server, and now you can see from the controller, you have this product controller, and around here there's an API/controller. And the name of that controller here, it is a product, so it is an API/product. I believe it's clear. Can we continue on? That's right. Now let's see. We also need to specify JSON visualization options. Now, I also made a video on communication from a client and a server made easy because of the new .NET 8 visualization. You can specify this from the top of the model, or you can do this inside the options. So let's create one option here to handle all requests. So this has to return this. So let's specify it on top here. This is going to return a JSON serializer options. Okay, so we're going to call this method to return this. Now it is a static. They're returning a new instance of this. Allow training commas we set to true. Also property name case insensitive here, it is true. So maybe if I have name capital and I have names lowercase, we want to check that they should, as soon as it has the name, the same spellings, it should match it. You shouldn't check either is capital, so it's going to skip it. No. And now here, property naming policy, we're going to use camel case. Camel case starts with lowercase and now uppercase. So that's a camel case. And now on mapping member handling, we set it to skip. For now, we are not handling, or we are not skipping any member. When you check the product, when getting from the API, it is only ID, even ID when posting, it is only ID that's not going to provide a value for it. So all the rest is going to have a value. But in case we decide to retrieve that and skip any of the property here, you're not going to have issue. At first, you're going to have issue, but because of the .NET 8, wow, .NET 8, this property, we can now skip that without having any issue. I believe this is clear. Okay, so we have these two methods. These are static and they are general one that you're going to be using often and often. So that's why I put them on top here. Now, the first thing to do here is you want to first get a string content, because you're going to make a post. So in a post, we have to specify a string content. And now we also create one method to handle the string content. So here, this method is going to handle the string content. Then paste it here. So here, this is what this method is going to do. We have a private static is a string content as a return type. And now the name is generate string content. We pass in the serialized object. And now here, we create a new instance of this string content. We pass in the serialized object as a payload coming in here. And we want to specify the encoding type as UTF-8. And our application type here is what's like JSON, because we are posting a JSON to the API. So we need to specify this also. Okay. Now that is this one. So all these methods, they are general one that you're going to be using often. So that's why I decided to put them here. So you can be using this. In case you want to use this outside the scope of this, you can put them in a separate class. Then you can make it a static, so you can be using them both class and outside models. But for now, let's maintain it here because we want to handle everything in here. Okay, now let's have a look with the next one. Serialized object and now the serialized object. So we're going to have three aspects. The first one here, it is if I want to serialize object, what can I do? So if I want to serialize object, it's going to return a string because you know this model here is going to be an object. We want to make it as a generic. So even when I call this method, I pass in the t value, it's still going to serialize it. That's why I made it as an object. I did not specify as a product. If you make this product, it means you are limited. You want to make it as contain a global one. So any model can be serialized through this method. So we serialize it into a JSON. We pass in this JSON option from this down here, which is going to return what I explained earlier on. Okay. Then the next one here, you want to deserialize it. And now we want to return a T value. So this is also a generic. And now we want to return a T value. We did not specify it. We pass in the JavaScript. JavaScript. Whoa, it's a JSON string here. And now it's going to deserialize it into a T value, then return this T value. Okay. Now that we have this set, we also want to return enumerable. Maybe this could be a list form. This serialization is only a single model. What of in case we get all products, we want to deserialize them. We cannot be calling this 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. No, we don't do that. We want to create a method to handle both. That's a bulk of what? Product. And let's put it down here. So deserialize. And now this is what it's doing. You can see it's an enumerable of T. Deserialize JSON string list. You pass in as a list of T. Then this is the same string. And now we want to deserialize it in a list form. And I'm passing this JSON string and also passing the options. And that is all. So the return type here, it is an enumerable. That is a list of T. The return type of this is just a single T, right? Good. So now we have this at the general ones, and you're going to be using this often. That's why I just have to set them on top as a static ones. So the instance of these are created once in the memory, and that's all. So memory usage is also very vital and crucial in the application. So at the time you want to, as soon as you use static, it means that the instance is created once and now kept and can be using it often. Okay. So let's see how to add product. So to add product, we can just have one method to handle this. So there's an add product, and you can override it with this method to add product. It is returning a service response and it's coming with the model as a payload. So get responses is equal to HTTP client dot post async, passing the base URL. Then we have to pass in generate string content and now serialize this object passing this model. Okay, so that's all that we are doing. Base URL is the base URL here, API/product. We need to pass in a string content. So here, generate string content. And now this string content here, it needs a serialized object. So the model that we pass as a model, we want to serialize it first before we pass into this string content. And now you can see within one line of code, we're able to do that since we have them extracted separately method down here. Okay, now let's read response. So we check if response here, it is true. If it is false, you can see we are negating it. So if the status code here, it is false. Okay, then you want to return this. The question is, what is the range of status code? It is not actually 200. It is 200, 201. Let me actually show you the status code, the range that we say it is success. So this side gives you all the complete HTTP status code. Now you see, if I say it is success, it means it starts from 200 and it ends up to 226. So if the response is found within any of this range, then it is what? It is success. And that is exactly what we are getting here. So in case it is success, in case it is not success, it means it couldn't get connected to the database at all. Meaning you want to return error occurred, try again later. But in case it's able to get connected to the API, then you're going to return, read a response from the API as a string. Then you want to deserialize the response into a response object, whereby this response, say, if I peep it, it has the Boolean expression, you can say it has the message as a record class. So we can going to convert it into this, and now we can return this service response. So we are returning this as a service response in here. Okay, so that's an add. Now, when you go to the next one, that is to get the list of products. We can also get the whole list in here. And now you can see from here, we need to have, is it featured item? Then we can now get the featured item. In case it is not, you can also return that. Okay, so let's have a look with this too. Then the next thing to do here is you're going to check and read the response if it is success. So if this results or if this response, so let's make that response. If this response is not success, return this null because here is a list. So return null. Else, then want to deserialize it as a list of products and I return this result. Okay. So if it is not null, then you can see from here that you say response.content.read as string async. Then we are going to deserialize it into a list form and I return this. And now let's change this to iList as well. Okay, so this is going to be solved. And now when you come here, we change it to this a list. So here it is a list of products. And maybe instead of this, we will have to convert this into a list, then return it to this. Okay, so to do that, we can just specify this dot. Will two lists work for this? Okay, so two lists will work because you're converting this to a list. Now let's see. So use collection expression. So okay, so maybe this is also a new one that we can actually use. Return it as a list form into this list of products. Okay. So the next thing to do here is we're going to design our front page. Okay. And with this front page, we need a carousel view. So maybe we can install a SyncFusion component. So right click on dependencies on the client and I click on manage NuGet packages. And now in there, we're going to install SyncFusion.blazor.navigations. So here, we're going to install SyncFusion.blazor.navigations. Here with this package, you need to install that. Aside from this, I would like to use the version of 23.1.36 because I have a key for this, and you can just get a community license key for free. Check, I'll put maybe that video in the video description. Those who don't know how to claim a free license key from the SyncFusion component. Now, aside from this, let's wait for this to get installed. We check the output. And it is installed now. Now, aside from this, let's also install the Teams package with the same version of 23.1.36. So that is this one. So 231.36. Let's install this. So when we are done installing this, we have to make some references in the index.html by adding the JavaScript file and also the CSS. So we have to do that. After this has installed, we can close this and let's navigate to the index.html. Now here, let's include, that is the JavaScript, this is the Bootstrap theme. And also let's include the JS file in here. Okay, so let's save this. Now let's go to solution. Now in the pages folder, we're going to create one component here and it's going to name it as a front. Let's say, how should you name it? Front page component. So let's add a new component and it's going to be front page component. So with this front page component, we want to have our carousel view in there. But before we do that, we need to create a list of products. So let's handle this. Let's create an instance of a list of products here so we can retrieve the product list from an API. And also when you go to the import section, we want to inject the interface in there. And now the interface is going to be the iProduct. So this is going to be iClient. So this is going to be instead of iProduct and now product service. So iProduct. And instead of using this product service, we can also create as client service. Okay, so client service. Now control period. Let's include the namespace in here. Now let's go back to the front page. So you're going to have access to control period. You're going to have access to our models. Let's save this. Let me close this and open it again. Okay, so it is saved now. It is now working. And the next thing to do here is once you have this list, is we have to create a method to get the data from an API. And in that, we can call this method as retrieve product. So here, this is going to retrieve a product from the API. So we see retrieve product. And now we check if this product contains data, then clear it. If not, then we're going to say that product service, and this is going to be a client service, not product service. So client service dot get all products. Let's have a look with the import section and then see this client service. And now from here, we paste this, and now it has dot get all product. Okay, so it is the same thing. Now this must be an async, and now wait, let's see what the issue is. It is saying, okay, so we need to specify this. Now here, we want to get featured items. Okay, so maybe you want to get featured items. So you pass in here as true. And it's going to be the featured item. So featured item, we pass in as true to get all featured item. Or maybe we can specify it, let's say featured is true. Will this work? We cannot do this. Okay, so let's pass here as featured. Okay. All right, so it is not advisable to specify something like this, no magic variable. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say that bool, and here it is saying featured is equal to true. Then let's grab this featured and now paste it here. Okay. Now we return if result is null, then return it. But in case it is not, then we're going to loop through. So instead of with this, we can loop through this result because we've converted this into a list already. So we can say this var I in the result, then product list dot add I. We can just remove this. Okay. So we're going to have a product, and that's going to be the featured. So featured product. So in here, let's say this is featured product list. Okay, so featured product list. Now with this featured product list, we can just replace it, and I replace it here. So this here is retrieving a featured product list. So featured products. Okay. Now we have this as I speak. Now let's come and loop through this whilst we display them in a slideshow using this carousel. So we can do that from this container. Let's see. Let me just grab the whole container here so I can just explain, go through with you. So on top here, I'm going to have this. Now let's see. The first one here, it is a featured container. So we are looping through the list. So let's copy this. And on top here, we say if.count is equal to 0, or we're going to say that if.count, if product list.any, we can use this. Let's see if it supports. So .any. Okay. So if it contains any, then what are we doing here? We want to loop through. We want to come here and execute this. Now with this carousel item, Control K, we have to include this namespace. So we include it over here, but we can just cut this and now go to the import and import it here. So we can be using it all the time in different components. We go back again, and this underlined here must be off. Okay, so let's see if I close this and open it again. I must have that solved. It's still there. Okay, it's going to go. So we have this, and we set this button visibility. We set it to on hover. So if I put the cursor on the carousel, I want to see the forward and on the previous, the next and on the previous button. Animation effect here, we set it to slide. You want to slide it. We have fade, we have slide. You can go in for any one. You see from here, we have fade, we have a customized one, and you can just use a slide too, because we have slide over here, and that's what we are using. Autoplay is set to true. As soon as the page starts, it should start. Show indicators also to true, so we can have the indicators shown below. Now with this product featured, we want to just pick only 5 and then display them in the carousel. So pick 5 of them. So we order them by the date, and I'll take just 5 of them and I'll display in the carousel. The rest will be displayed in the featured component itself. Okay. Now, when you open this carousel, we can just create this template, and we see it is just an image. You have this image over here, which are this base default image. We set the weight and the height. You float to an end to display to is it the right side? Yeah, the right side. And now we set this container into a flexible one. So we see we are centering it. and we set the position at the top to expand it to an end. And here this is just a Bootstrap class that I am using in here. As you can see, we have as a paragraph whereby I want to display the name of the product. You can see this is the name of the product. I'm using the font family of Impact, and now there's the CSS class added to that with a text indent of 2. And you can see from here, I'm using this also as a we have superscript and now subscript. So you want to show a superscript of this, the name, if it is a new, the label, and also the quantity. So we have a method known as get new label, and now we pass in the date. So we are checking if the date it is less than or it is less than. Let's see the method. From this get label, we want to check and return a new badge. Okay, so in here we want to return the new badge here. So you can see it is returning a string. We accept the date here, and at the maximum date that is supposed to load from the day that the product was uploaded to be 30 days. During that period, we must have a new tag because the product is new. If it exceeds 30 days, the product must be null. The new tag must be null because it is no more new. It has lasted for 30 days. So we check if we subtract today's date from the day that is uploaded, we convert it into days. If it is less than or equal to this maximum days, it means we want to return new. In case it is not, return null, and that's going to be null, means it's not going to display anything at all. So here you see we call this method in here, and we call it to check if it's going to be new or not. Aside from that, we are checking for the position. Now check from this is also a badge that we are using here. Now what is this badge doing? We are checking the product quantity. So we check if the product quantity minus 1 is greater than 0. Meaning maybe if the quantity that you added, maybe if I add one product and the quantity that I have in stock is only 1, then if I subtract 1 from that, it's going to be 0. Meaning this statement is going to be false. In case it is that, then display the product quantity as 1. But in case it is 2, and I subtract 1 from it and becomes 1, it means that 1 is greater than 0. If so, then display the product quantity minus 1 plus. So it means that you want to tell the person that the quantity that we have in stock, it is the quantity minus 1 plus. It means you have more than that. Okay. It is a new feature that I'm adding. You can also decide to create your own. Okay. But it seems you want to tell the person that we have more than 1 plus or more than 2 plus, meaning we have 3. So 2 plus, meaning 2 and upwards, we have 8. Now you see from also here, we're getting the description. Now the description, we don't want to display all the description. We want to substring it to maybe 40 and append dot to it. So we call a method to handle that. And now this method, we're going to have the implementation here to handle that method. And this is going to come from down here. So we accept in the description, and then there's the append dot. So we have 3 dots. The maximum length of the text or that's the description must be 40. We get the length of the current description coming in. We store it over here. So we are saying that if the description length here it is greater than maximum length, that is a 40, then use a length, take a substring of it, 0, and now pick up to 100. Okay, so here's supposed to be 100, I think so, because you are starting from 0 and I'm picking 100. So if the maximum length here must be 100. So if the maximum length it is greater than the length of this, or if the length of the description coming in here greater than the maximum length, it means you have the text about 120 or 150. If so, then pick only 100 and now append the 3 dots to it. So you're going to have 100 characters or 100 text, then, or is it 100 characters? Then you're going to have append 1, 2, 3 as dots to it. It means there's more. But in case it is less than 100, then it means display 8 in there and do not append any dots. So that is what this also method is doing to get us the description from this area. Okay. Now the rest here is we have a button, and on this button we are using an H tag, horizontal tag as a bootstrap. Gap is 1, and then the flexible here is the center. And we want to have 2 buttons, details and now buy now. So here we are using the font awesome with cat plus and now buy now. Okay, so for now we are not implementing any of this. It is just a design that we are creating. And we have this previous button template. and we have next button template. Now, we are using a carousel, so we can specify a template in there. The first template is going to be the child template. So aside from this, we have this previous button template, and now we are customizing our own. I want to use, so I went online and I got some images that I can use for this. So I named them less than and greater than. Okay, so that's what I'm using. And now this template can be found in here in the resources. So I created a folder called resources and I'll put them in there. So I'm going to copy this solution, and now in the www root folder, I'm going to paste it in here from that. So paste it, and now that is a resources folder. So if I open this, we have this greater than, you can see, and we have less than. Okay, so this one I have. And aside from that, we are showing them here, and we set the height and then the width. We set the style color, and we set, when you come to the style, we set this to, let's see, this is a style. You want to use pointer to handle that. So we come here and now we have to create a style for this. So style, and now we use this pound key and we say cursor. This cursor, you want to have it as pointer. So as soon as you point the mouse on those images, that's the less than or the previous and the next, you want to show as a pointer in there. And now this is an indicator template. So with these indicators, we are creating a class and a name as indicators. So with this indicator, you want to customize our own indicator. Okay, so we can do that, and with the class of it, it's going to be the indicator. So let's go. This, we're going to be using this somewhere else. So I prefer we put all this. Okay, so we remove this, and now you go to the app.css. That's the general one, and I'll put them there. So the same CSS. You can see we have this app.css. Now down here, let's try to include this here. So we go back, and I'm going to have that classes set, and we can just paste them in there. So in here, let's have our custom. So let's say this is our custom styles. So I can just comment this. Now down here, I'll paste this. Now all this that you see here, it is from the Syncfusion. So if you want to customize the indicator, you can use this class to do that. So that is what I made of. And here is the star cursor. So you can see we have this cursor as pointer, and we have star buttons. Also set this border to radius to 0. So these buttons are called here. So star buttons. When you check this front component, when you check our button section from this angle, we have these two buttons here, and now we have this buy now, and also go to details. From this, we have either star button. So you want to set them into a block form. That's a button shape. And that's what we are doing in here. If you are not able to type everything, don't worry. I'll put it at the GitHub. So you can just go in there and clone it. Okay. It will be there waiting for you patiently. Okay. So we have our featured tags done completely. And I think we are good to go now. Now, what we need to do next here is we have to configure our layout. So let's go to the same section, the client, and now the same layout, because you have this main layout. And now within that main layout, we want to override it, and we want to remove all the default one. So here, we replace it with this. We have to go to create a navigation bar from this section. Okay. So navigation bar is going to be a component that you're going to create. Now with this, you're going to use a Bootstrap class to handle that. When you go to Bootstrap documentation, you're going to have access to a list of navigation bars. You can just copy any of them, and that's what I use to create this navigation bar. So solution, we create a component in this layout, and I'll name it as navigation bar. Now you can see this is a Bootstrap class that I'm using from a Bootstrap. As you can see from here, just a button, nav toggle, as you know already in a Bootstrap, it is there, the code is there. What I did was I changed the home, product, and our services, testimonial, and our contact. Okay, that's all thing that I did in it. This is a default one for account, and now you're going to be changing this later on. Now the next button here is show search icon. I have this search component created. That is, if I want to show or hide search icons, what can I do? So you can see we have this button, and this button means search clicked. So if I click on this, this is just an icon, and you can see it's a magnifying glass from a font awesome. And if I click on this icon, I want to set this show search to true, and I set this show search icon to false. Okay, so I have the implementation here over here. Now defaultly, show search icon is true when you run the page. When this is clicked, you want to set the show search here to true. So this is show search. This is set to true, and now show search icon must set to the opposite of this. That's going to be the false. So two of them cannot have the same state. One must be the opposite of the another one, and that is this one. Okay, now let's create this search component. So maybe if you don't know where to grab this, I'll put the documentation, the link to this specific reference, this navbar in the description. So you can just click on it, go to the Bootstrap docs, and then grab it for free. Now let's have a look at this search component. So you have to create a component known as search component, and now this search component is going to handle all search. So here we create one component, now name it as search component, and it's just a form. Deflex, we have a search text box, and we have a button. Okay, so that's a button, and as you can see, that is it. All right, I think we are almost done, but one thing that I need to do here is to create our featured section. Okay, but for now, let's run it and see. So this is what you need to do. We go back to the home.razor, and now within the home.razor, we need to include our front component. Since we are done handling that, let's check our solution, then go to home.razor, and now here let's remove everything. Let's paste this here. This is our front page. Save this. So inside of this, it must be a client service. So it must be client service. They're gonna have add product. Okay, then we want to now, before we jump to that, you will see we check it. If it is true, then set this dialog values, set success, and now set over here. If it is false too, then display the response that is coming from the server, and now show the dialog box. Okay, after that, return. And now let's check. So from this section, from where we have our front page here, we call this method, but we did not call it when the page initializes, right? So to do that, we need to specify. Okay, so it is now, we've changed the method name. So this one in the program.cs, that is the client section. Take note. Now here, you can register the component anywhere. Okay, so let's register this and control period. Okay, so it's been added already. Now let's see. So let's save this. So we go to the solution, and where we have this www folder, we're going to create a new folder, name it as JS. So we open this, and now with this, we create this dialog.js. So this is a simple method. We have www, this JS, and it is called dialog.js. And in that dialog, that is what we are having. Dialog.js. So we are having this method. So this is not what we want for now. So we can remove all this method. Okay, now we need only this. So window.show dialog, and now we want to grab the div element which has an ID, and now show this model. Okay, so that's what we are doing. So in the index folder, you can see now we've added the JavaScript for the dialog, so we have to reference it in the application. Okay, so down here, let's reference it here. So we just have to go in there, and now we have to drag the dialog.js and now paste it in here. Okay, so this is all that we need to do. Now let's save this, and let's run the application and see what we have now. So as the page loads, let's first check if the JavaScript file that we created for the dialog box has been downloaded into the browser. We can do that from just going to the developer tools, and in here, click on the application, and you can see where we have the frames, come to the top, click on the top one. Next, we have scripts. So click on it, and you can see we have our dialog.js, and this is the simple method that we have. We're going to call it. That's right. Now we have this ready. Let's navigate to, that is the add product. And now in here, we are going to add product and see the next thing that's going to happen. So we have this, and as you know, I have this that I can, let me just copy this. I have an Apple Pro 15 like this, the same thing. Okay, so instead of this Pro Max, I think this has been added already. Or we can just go back to the app where we have our product table. You can see we can highlight all these and then delete them. So let's delete. Let's delete this as well. Now, when you refresh this, I think you are not having any record again. Okay, so we have extra records. Let's remove everything in it. Refresh it. So save this, refresh this, and it is empty now. Okay. So we go back to the app, then Apple Pro Max. Let's specify the size or the price. Okay. Now the quantity, it is 25. We have a description, and we're going to specify the description in here. Okay, so now the description that I just copied and pasted. Okay, so it tells you the battery and the camera, the display, and etc. performance. Now let's choose an image for this, and I'm going to choose maybe this image. Now click on save and processing. So please wait. Let's see. Good. So you can see now we have notification, product saved, right? And you can see we have okay. So I click on OK, and it is now off. So we are done. If I click on it again, it's still going to happen. You see processing, and I stop. You see we have a notification product exists, and the button here, it is danger. So this is a dynamic dialog element that we have implemented. Okay, let's add another one. We want to add 2. So Apple 14. You can just change this to 14. You can maintain the same price here. Let's say this is 5. Quantity, it is 20. Okay, 20 here. Let's make that 1. Then let's see. So let's choose image here. And this Apple 14. Or let's use this. Save this. So saved. Now let's go to localhost. So let's see the main display now and see what we have now. You can see now we have 2 items. And the 2 items that we have, we did not specify as a Boolean expression. We did not specify as a feature, so we have nothing in here, right? Now let's go to the app again in here. Let's refresh this, and now let's set this to true. Featured, so we set this to true, and set this also to true. Now let's save this, refresh this up, and now in here, let me just go to inspect element. And let's go to the network tab. Let's refresh it. Now let's see if a product call will be made here to retrieve it. So network. Okay. So let's see. We have the data in here. And you see we have our less than greater than images. And when you check this, we have our font shop, right? We have our product here, and the feature is true. So when you go to preview, you will see we have the 2 items in here, and that is what we have. You can see now we have the icon. Check here. You can see this is 1. Have you seen? So this is 1. It means it is. You have the quantity here. It is 1. So it did not add the plus. Let's wait for the next one to see. So the next one, you can just okay. So you see here you have plus because here it is 25 minus 1 making 24 plus. It means more than 24. This is a description, and in case it is more than 100, append .with, and that's what we have. So you can see we have this and the customized indicator that we created. You can see we have this over here, and these are the images that we copied. You can see as soon as I hover the mouse on, it turns to that is this an icon, as you can see from this. But if I click on this account, you see I'm not seeing the pop-up because we did not install this that is the Bootstrap. Yes, I forgot Bootstrap. Yeah, the Bootstrap. So now you've seen that this is working. The let's do here is let's install that component. So let's close it. So let's go to solution. Now in the www, that is the CSS or www root folder. Right click on this. Let's click on add client side library. And in here, we're going to type in Bootstrap, I think 5.6. That's the current version, 5.3.2. So let's have to install. We are installing into the target location of the www root folder. And in that, you're going to create a folder for Bootstrap and now install. So let's wait for this session to get restored in here for us. You can see this running this to get it installed. All right, so it seems like we have it already here. So we go to the CS file and now let's navigate to the index. So in here, you can see we have a default Bootstrap here. So we're going to remove this default Bootstrap and let's include the new one that we have just added. So Bootstrap, you want to use the minified version. So here, let's drag this to this session. And you want the minified one, so let's remove the second one because you don't need that. And now let's include the JavaScript file too. Maybe you can put it down here. And that to be found in the JS JavaScript. And now you want the bundle.js. So include that too. And now you want to use the minified one. So let's remove the rest. Save this. Let's run this and see. So I've added some images in here, some product in here. Now, when you check because I have about 10 or so, but since we are taking only 5, because when you check this front page component, we are taking only 5 from here. The list that we have, we take only 5. And we did that from, let's see where we are using that. That is the front page. So from the carousel, let's see. Okay, so you can see that we are looping through and we are taking only 5 out of them. And that is the reason why you see I have a lot, but I'm seeing only 5 here. Now the next here is how do you display the rest as a featured item down here. Let's have a look on how to do that. So let's close this and let's go to application. Now in the pages folder, we are going to create one component and it's going to be a featured product component. So featured product component. It is here. This is what we are doing. We are using this div container fluid and margin top as 5 to give enough space on top. We have a horizontal line to separate it. And we have this as featured text on top. And here we are customizing to my font. So where from this font, I just downloaded a font from the internet. And now let me just grab this font. You go to the Solution Explorer. In the www folder, I open it and now let me paste it here. It's in the folder called font. What is the name of this font? That is this. It is just a vermin.ttf, so true type format. So this is a font style that I've created. And now with this, you have to register this or you have to link this font with your application. So we're going to create a class. This is going to be a CSS isolation. We don't want this class to load for all the entire application. You want to isolate it and load when the that's a header component, that's the navigation component has been loaded. So we go to the folder where we have our pages. And this is the pages. You can see we have this layout. We have our navigation bar.razor. So we're going to create a class, a CSS class, and I'll name it as navigation bar.razor.css. So it is there even already. I've added it already, as you can see, navigation bar.razor.css. And now in that, you can see that we're adding the font face. The family name here is what my font. And now you can see we have the source here, and it's the font folder. And I'll go to a file called vermin.ttf. And at the top bar, we want to set the font style to this my font. And our text align, we set to center. So this is CSS installation. It's going to load as soon as this component also get loaded to the application. Okay, so now we have this. I think our view is going to change. You can just test this up quickly and now check it out. All right, so you can see that